a little bit. And I think to get started, I'll be sharing today big picture. I'm hoping that after today's conversation, you all come away with a better picture of the current landscape of housing instability and homelessness in our region, and some of the things that we're doing to respond to it. And when I say we, I don't just mean Beacon. I mean any of us who want to put our faith and values into action in order to make a difference on this issue. And I'll talk a little bit about Beacon's role in that, and in particular our congregational collaborative, Valley Presbyterian included. But first by show of hands, how many folks here this morning are entirely new to Beacon, don't know anything about Beacon? Often when we go to congregations, people know quite a bit about us because of the work that we all do together, but I don't ever want to assume. Anyone new to Beacon? All right, relatively new to Beacon. What about by show of hands, somebody who's been involved is a Beacon advocate around one of our local land use hearings to get a building approved? All right, so we've got one. What about Beacon advocacy in some other way, maybe at the state legislature? No, we've got a different advocate right here. And then, by show of hands, if you've been able to contribute in some other way to this work. Everybody's been involved. Well, I thought it would help me out actually, since we have a small group here, if we could go around, I'd love you to say your name and what inspired you to come to this conversation today, whether it's a Beacon connection or whether it's just a broader interest in housing and homelessness. What connects you to today's conversation? That'll help me know where to take things today. So we'll just
well, one thing you should know is this congregation was huge with families moving forward. Yeah. So the Valley did that for years.
Yes.
People were very active with it. So, and personally, I'm just very interested in affordable housing.
And your name?
Carol.
Thanks for being here, Carol. We'll just go down the road here.
Well, we just kind of put adult ed generally, whatever.
Attendance.
Okay, yeah, but also interested in the subject matter, yeah.
Well, Emerson Village, I mean, we donated to that, and I mean, we used to do families moving forward in that, and just kind of knowing, I mean, it was interesting in the paper today that they were talking about more of like boarding houses and that of, finding places where people could just, have a room, but go in a common place, that kind of housing, maybe we need to get back to those kind of days. So, there should be, many alternatives.
Yeah, we need a whole range of strategies.
Right.
We'll talk a little bit about that today.
Yeah, I'm Dave, and I just wanted to get a better idea what Beacon does.
Great.
I'm Sue, and I'm same kind of thing. And Claire Terrace is not the same thing. That's a different organization.
Different organization, but definitely one of our peer organizations in the space, especially in permanent supportive housing, which we'll talk about today.
Just trying to follow and understand what God wants done, what I'm supposed to do with my life. That be okay?
Let me know. Next out, it's love mercy, rock hungry.
I'm not kind of curious about Beacon. I know there's lots of housing initiatives all over the place. Is this our regional one, or how does that fit in with other housing initiatives? And I kind of wanted to meet you because I think you've been a school board representative for a long time. You chose to move to this opportunity, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I was a little bit curious about that with you as well.
Sure. Yeah, I served on the Hopkins School Board for a few years. That's my hometown school district. I went from there to the Hennepin County Board of Commissioners. I served as our chair of our Housing and Redevelopment Authority, and also one or two co-chairs on Heading Home Hennepin, which is the county's homelessness response before coming Beacon. So bring a systems view to this stuff, including the real brass tacks practicals we serve residents in our homes.
Hi, I'm Pat Butler, that's Lynn. And oh yeah, I didn't say my name. Yeah, and just like you did, to understand what it is that you all do and what Valley's connection is. And same as. Learning more about Beacon.
Thanks for being here.
I'm Terry, and I've just gone on session here as one of the elders for Mission Possible. And you folks are one of the more dedicated accountants, and I just want to learn more about it because I'm like 3 months into this role and there's a lot to learn.
Thanks for being here.
Oh, thanks to the party. I'm Jane Pinter. What I'm saying.
Oh, just your name and what brought you to today's conversation.
I'm always happy to learn more about something that's going on locally. And my brother is from Flux downstairs. It's a problem with more than stuff. So, to learn more.
Terrific.
Fun. Just want to learn more about Beacon.
I'm Chuck. Forward with families moving forward, the Interfaith Hospitality Network, so church has been a long time advocate of homeless, help. And serve we can. I think I'd be interested in see your ideas or your reflections on what's happening in the growing of every agency and how that's gonna really trickle down to your organization.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to speak to that. Maybe I don't have a dedicated slide or place in the presentation, but what I hope to do is present a little snapshot, a presentation up front, and leave plenty of time for questions and discussion. So maybe we circle back around to that one at the end. Well, great. Well, thank you for being here this morning. As I mentioned, my name's Chris, relatively new president and CEO of Beacon Interfaith Housing Collaborative. I've been in the role for a little over a year and a half. Before that, I was on the Hennepin County Board of Commissioners representing District 6, which is a lot of West Metro communities, but in particular, the policy and program area that I really hung my hat on was our housing and homelessness work at the county. So I tell people I'm a recently former elected official and recovering elected official, which these days, I don't know if I got out at the right time or the wrong time, but we know that everything is getting upended. And so much of this work that we do would only be possible not only through the voice and extraordinary action and generosity of community members, but a lot of what Beacon does and our peers in this housing work is really an extension of a reflection of public investments and public values as well. And really, I hope you come away better understanding of how the work that we do is really part of a broader systems response to homelessness, larger than any one individual organization can hold. But the more we better understand what it is together, the better we can hold it together. So what I would say, if you want to go to the next slide, since the very beginning of our history at Beacon, a little over 20 years ago, what started with a single congregation in South Minneapolis asking how to better love their unhoused neighbors, and in that case was literally folks living in their parking lot, has now grown into the largest permanent support housing organization in the state of Minnesota, and really a systems level response to homelessness. And just sort of around the horn of the areas of Beacon's work and focus, we really do three things when it comes down to it. Number one, we create new homes, principally for those exiting homelessness across a few populations that we are in particular focused on. Individuals exiting homelessness, often those who meet state or federal definitions of chronic homelessness. This might be somebody who's sleeping tonight in an encampment and has been unstably housed for years, might have a persistent or untreated, undiagnosed mental health issue, substance use disorder. We serve a lot of individuals like that through what's known as a housing first model across 4 of our properties. We also have a focus on youth exiting homelessness. This is roughly those age 16 to 24. And so we run 4 youth housing properties. And then a growing area of focus for Beacon has been in family supported housing. These are homes for families exiting homelessness. And with that, you not only have the impact of serving an individual, but really the opportunity to disrupt multi-generational poverty, because by definition, there's usually kids involved. And that is, and I'll get to this next, somebody mentioned Emerson Village earlier in this congregation's specific and special connection to that place. That's an example of family supported housing. So Beacon creates new homes. We have a pretty robust development pipeline, bring roughly 1 to 2 new multifamily properties online per year. Number 2, we serve residents in our existing homes. So we own and operate roughly 24 multifamily properties across the Twin Cities metro area, serving a little over 1,100 residents. And 2/3 of those homes are what's considered permanent supported housing. Do folks know what permanent supported housing is? That's one of the deeper dives that we'll do today. But permanent supportive housing is a unique model that's aimed specifically at ending homelessness. So it blends permanent housing. So it's not shelter, it's somebody's permanent home. They have a lease, all the rights and responsibilities that come with that. But it also brings on-site services targeted to whatever population of need is that we're serving there. It is a not only compassionate and humane response to homelessness, we also know that it is the most effective solution for homelessness in terms of if someone's been chronically homeless homeless for a long time. It is the type of intervention that is most correlated with ending homelessness for that person and keeping them stably housed over the long term, because we know that housing ends homelessness, but not housing alone, but housing plus services is really what the secret weapon is in our fight against homelessness.
What kind of services?
I'll talk a little bit about that further in the presentation, but big picture, about 2/3 of our homes are what would be considered permanent supportive housing, which makes us, with roughly 650 units, the largest permanent supportive housing provider in the state of Minnesota. In fact, about 1 in 10 units of permanent supportive housing in Minnesota are held by Beacon. And then third, we change systems. So we galvanize individuals, congregations to try to change the wind, whether that's in St. Paul, whether with the legislature, whether that is in trying to persuade a local city government to approve a new development. We are involved in the systems level work to protect, sustain, and grow solutions to homelessness in our community. And at the very end, we have an advocacy opportunity for folks in that as well. So what started really with, a single congregation asking how to better meet unmet needs in their community has now grown into this systems level response. 100 congregations in our collaborative across the Twin Cities metro area, including Valley Presbyterian. So next slide. So this right here is Emerson Village. This is actually the construction photo. I actually need to update it and swap it out here with the actual photo, because we just opened our doors a few months ago on Emerson Village in North Minneapolis. This is 40 units of family supportive housing. Around half of the units in this building have a special partnership with Hennepin County and the Child Protection Division there, with focus on family reunification. So if a parent, mom, dad has lost custody of their children, and one of the things that needs to be true in order to make reunification possible is that they have a permanent home. 20 of the units at Emerson Village are making that possible. It's our service providers on the ground, Project for Pride and Living and the Northside Achievement Zone. I was just over there this last week leading a tour of folks like you, and we do lead tours from time to time. You can check out the website for opportunities to check out some of these buildings, but we have some folks in there. And I got to interact with Linda. Linda is a woman who works with PPL, and she is the front desk coordinator at Emerson Village, and she describes herself as the community auntie or grandma. And right next to her front desk there is this cart full of mostly healthy snacks, bananas, apples, oranges, granola bars. There's a few less healthy items in there as well. But she says the highlight of her day is when she gets to wave goodbye to the kids lining up at the bus stop. There's a bus stop right there that picks up the kids. And when she gets to welcome them home at the end of the day. That's really what permanent supportive housing makes possible. It's more than a roof over people's head. It's a friend, it's a role model, it's a champion on site who can meet you where you're at, understand your story enough to help you find that safety and trust to start to articulate your own goals for the future, and then try to meet you in that, whether that's helping you navigate a public benefit program, helping connect you with the right skill you need to get a job, helping you connect with childcare resources, really the services that happen on site in a place like Emerson Village are designed to evolve to whatever that population of need is there. And this one's special in particular because of Valley's unique role in making these homes possible. It's not an overstatement to say that these homes exist because you all are here. So at any time, and I think particularly in these times, we often wonder if our voices still matter, if the things that we do in this world make a difference. I can tell you that Emerson Village is proof positive that your voices are powerful. Your generosity is powerful, and that we can make a difference for individuals in our community. Next slide. So I want to anchor us today, first and foremost, in the problem that we're trying to solve for. And, big picture, our region faces an intersecting crisis of housing instability and homelessness that harms individuals and families. It really deepens already deep and persistent racial disparities, and really threatens our collective future. 45% of households in the Twin Cities metro area are housing cost burdened, meaning they spend more than a third of their income on their rent or their mortgage. That's across incomes. But if you look really specifically at extremely low income friends and neighbors of the Twin Cities metro area, we know that we have about 111,000 extremely low income households in the Twin Cities metro area. That's folks that are at 30% of the area median income or below. And we currently only have 40,000 units available that would be affordable for a household at that level. That's a staggering 72,000 unit gap that directly corresponds to the broader challenges that we bear witness to with our friends and neighbors in our community, whether we've had a lived experience of housing instability ourselves, have a friend or neighbor who's going through that, or we just are awake, compassionate human beings moving through our communities. And we see, other signs like encampments, person on the street looking for a little extra help. This, in a nutshell, is our housing instability crisis. When we talk about ending homelessness, these numbers are a little smaller. It's not 72,000. Between Hennepin County and Ramsey County, each are required by the federal government to do an annual homelessness count across certain populations. And what we're really talking about here in Hennepin and Ramsey County are about 4,000 individuals that are considered chronically homeless. And if we were going to functionally end homelessness in the Twin Cities metro area, that's what we would be trying to solve for. We would be trying to figure out how you target our limited resources for a precision response to meet the needs of those specific populations. And the reason that's a relevant concept in a homelessness strategy more broadly, is we know that that's where we historically have gotten most traction. When we target resources to a very specific population, and not just broadly target resources, literally down to an individual with a name and a story, and we know enough about them to know what their individual barriers are to housing instability, we can solve homelessness. Hennepin County just this year declared a functional end to veterans homelessness, for example. It's a smaller population, but it offers clues about the broader system's response that we can bring to other populations, youth, chronically homeless individuals, and families. And the common thread across all of it, whether we're talking about veterans or any of those other populations, is the thing that ends homelessness, the thing that solves it, is housing plus services, permanent supportive housing. Next slide, please. This is also just a snapshot to underscore the deep and persistent and painful racial disparities at the heart of our homelessness crisis here in Minnesota. It's a little hard to see the data, but the biggest piece I draw your attention to is, down here, this is a chart that shows your likelihood to be experiencing homelessness in Minnesota based on your racial or ethnic background. If you are African American or Black in Minnesota, you are 13 times more likely than white Minnesotans to be experiencing homelessness. If you're Native American in Minnesota, you're 28 times more likely to be experiencing homelessness. Now, it's a smaller overall population, but just in terms of the disparities, it's extraordinary. It's why actually in Beacon's Housing First work across 3 of our sites, I'll get to one of them later, Bemis-Seda, American House, and Kimball Court. Over 2/3 of those residents are Native American, and we have culturally responsive services in those spaces. But if we want to solve for homelessness, we also need to understand, not just at a moral values level, but really at a pragmatic and practical level, to make sure that the housing solutions we're bringing are culturally responsive to the specific populations that we're serving. That's the way that we're going to get around this. Next slide. Before we get to solutions, I also wanted to highlight a few broader trends as we've navigated this moment on homelessness response, specifically through supportive housing. As I mentioned before, it starts with the sobering numbers around housing instability in our region. But one of the reasons why it's this work has never been more needed and never been more challenging is the mental health crisis, which has only gotten worse since the pandemic, a deadly and rapidly evolving opioid epidemic that's translating into increased resident acuity, both in terms of the number of folks extremely vulnerable with complex and challenging backgrounds, both the intensity of that acuity and the number of those with acute needs. And as I mentioned before, deep and persistent disparities within each trend. These forces have hit our communities and residents extremely hard. By extension, it has hit organizations like Beacon and any of our peers that are so bold as to stand in these gaps, serving residents like this with excellence, fidelity, and care. It's hit us hard too. It's led to rising costs, including in areas that we didn't have to contemplate before, like beefier front desk or even security. It's translating into what I would describe as unfunded mandates, where the level of service that we would want to be able to provide to residents in this housing, to meet the moment and meet the needs. We have to fundraise over and above what we get from public sources in greater degree than we've ever had to do before. It's really built on what were already pretty razor thin margins and old assumptions on the part of policymakers about the true costs of serving residents in a permanent support housing setting. Then add to that, and we can talk about this later, the new uncertainties, risks and threats, coming out of Washington. But it is a moment, as I mentioned before, this work has never been more needed. It has never been more challenging and needs all of us to hold it effectively. Next slide. The good news is that despite all this, we do know what works. And I've been chatting a little bit about this along the way here. But what you're looking at here is what's called a housing continuum, which shows a range of solutions, responses, strategies on housing held by both community and public institutions like government across a whole range of income levels and life circumstances. At the bottom, at one end, you see our emergency response to homelessness. And if you think about our shelter system and our shelter response, programs like Families Moving Forward, this is really designed to be an emergency response to homelessness, but by definition, temporary. So the whole focus, for example, of Hennepin's homelessness response down at this level is to make homelessness rare, brief, and non-reoccurring. Those are the three operative pillars of the strategy. They literally have an office of rare, an office of brief, and an office of non-reoccurring. The non-reoccurring piece is the bridge into permanent supportive housing. So the question is, if you want to move someone though who has been homeless, or especially if they've been homeless for a long time, into housing and then other levels of opportunities, what's the bridge? What's the link? What's the thing that moves them from that trajectory and course into opportunity, stability, and hopefully a life that looks much different than before? The answer is permanent supportive housing. That is the bridge. Permanent supportive housing, as I mentioned before, is a compassionate, proven. There's extraordinary evidence about the effectiveness of permanent supportive housing. Like for example, at a high level, if you take somebody who meets the definition of chronic homelessness and you simply give them a housing voucher and a place to live, the recidivism rate, the return to streets rate is something like 50%. Like flip a coin on whether or not they're going to be able to stay stably housed, even if you provide a place to live. If you provide wraparound services to that person, in particular, if it's on site, that number goes down to 15%. 85% of chronically homeless individuals who move into permanent supportive housing are stably housed a year later. Yeah, go ahead.
I can share something that I didn't realize almost until now. I have a nephew who was in permanent supportive housing, and that he was homeless for a while, and it was a mental illness situation, and something Bemidji, and his parents were able to get him back, and that's where their bridge was. My brother and family really advocated to look for and find something that would work for him, and found an opening up there.
Yeah.
But because of the support in the building, he's, staying on medication and he's staying healthy. He's got a job, and it's been a lot of it. Could be coming up on 5 years now. I mean, it's been a while. And so it's been very successful for him.
That's an extraordinary and powerful
Can you describe this, some examples of the supportive aspects?
Yeah, so it looks different depending on pop.
Right. For me, for Kent, it's just the fact that there's somebody who checks in on him. It could be that simple, just that somebody's checking in on him and kind of making sure he's okay and sure, whatever the meds are. There's also, of course, some requirements in terms of what you can't do in the building. And that's, again, a checking in process. So at least that's that experience.
Yeah, and it really depends on the population. So in our youth supportive housing properties, there's a real focus on, first and foremost, when we meet with these young people, oftentimes there's an untreated or undiagnosed mental health issue. So it's mental health services and support. They haven't finished their high school education. It's about that, GED attainment. Knowing that in particular in youth supportive housing, they're going to age out eventually. That's what makes it a little different than our housing first or family properties. It's trying to set them up with, whatever they would need, either job skills training or the job itself that's first going to help them pay their rent and then eventually be able to move on and up and out of there. But really, it's that caring adult that knows the young person and also knows the system, both public systems, but also community opportunities to really meet that person where they're at, help them name and identify their goals, and then, be there to help be that bridge and that guide. What's interesting about it though, and this goes back to the principles of practice that have been formed, first federal investments in supportive housing, then the state followed, now it's sort of matriculated out through local governments. One of the core concepts in permanent supportive housing, it's a little counterintuitive, is that services are voluntary. Services are not a condition of tenancy. So somebody wouldn't lose their housing if they didn't choose to avail themselves of the services in the building. And that's also got a basis in the evidence as well. There have been longitudinal studies that have showed if you demand participation in the service program as a condition of the housing, it doesn't improve the service outcomes or the likelihood that people actively participate in the services. It does increase the likelihood that they wind up burning out or flaming out at housing opportunity. So we try to, across our settings, adhere to these evidence-based principles of practice in permanent supportive housing. I saw this, I think it was a friend of mine at the Minnesota Interagency Council on Homelessness just this last week posted something that I thought described this perfectly. It's that shelter saves lives, but housing plus services ends homelessness. We need both, and we need to understand where both sit on a continuum and the range of responses to homelessness in our community. Next slide. So this is Joseph Maxwell. He's one of our relatively new residents at Bema Seda in the heart of downtown Minneapolis. So Bema Seda is an Ojibwe word that means let's walk together. It also is Beacon's newest housing first property down in the heart of downtown Minneapolis, actually right around the corner from the Four Seasons. It's quite the juxtaposition of those two Minnesotas. 48 units of housing first for chronically homeless individuals, mostly exiting encampments, with a focus on ending Native American homelessness in particular. It's a partnership between Beacon and Red Lake Nation. Most of the vouchers that are in this building that pay for the rents for residents are actually come directly from Red Lake Nation to support their residents. Before moving into Bema Seda, Joseph lived in his car on the streets for 5 years. This was the first time he had ever had an apartment of his own. And in describing in those first few weeks and months his experience, contrasting with his experience on the street living in shelter, he said, the biggest thing that jumps out at me is just how quiet it is. This is the place where I can finally fall into a deep sleep. I'll also point out, I talked about the efficacy, the evidence to support permanent supportive housing as a solution. It's also a cost-effective solution. Housing is expensive. Housing plus services is an even greater investment, but it's less expensive than our system response to homelessness, and comes with a far more compassionate and lower human and moral cost, both to individuals and to our community. I mentioned Four Seasons earlier. Any guesses where in the state of Minnesota is the most expensive place you could spend the night? Any guesses? It's not actually Four Seasons. The answer is jail. Jail is the single costliest place for a person at night in terms of the public investment required. Any guesses on the second most expensive place to spend the night?
Probably the hospital.
The emergency room.
Okay.
Our jails and hospitals have become systems of first resort when it comes to our community's response to homelessness. We don't think of jail and in the ER as the homelessness response, because it's not. But when people are in crisis, it's where people line up. It's in absence of well-funded shelters, and even more importantly, housing with services to move people into. So jail is the most expensive, emergency room is the second most expensive. Maybe the Four Seasons, the third most expensive. The most cost-effective place to spend the night for any of us, not just for somebody exiting homelessness, is in our own home, in our own bed. And it's not just less costly, it's where we build our lives and build our futures. That's no less true for Joseph than it is for any of us. Next slide. So where do we go from here? You know, we are really navigating this moment together where Beacon, as we have since the beginning, is trying to build and cultivate a movement of folks that are committed to ending homelessness in Minnesota and to understand the systems level interventions required to get us there and what it takes from policymakers, what it takes from all of us as community members in terms of our voice, our generosity, our time. This is one tangible way that folks can elevate their voices right now. We're barreling down at the end of the legislative session. We are trying to help policymakers understand that we are in a moment where we need to protect, sustain, and grow permanent supportive housing's effective solution to homelessness. So for anybody that can or wants to take out their phone, if you scan this, it'll take you to an online petition that it'll figure out based on where your address is, who your legislator is, and we'll help you send a message to them. But that's one of the actions that we're on.
Are there current bills that are in consideration right now that would be supported?
Yes, we are advancing right now, and it sort of, this is sort of a general petition, but it helps educate about a couple of these specific legislative opportunities. So one is Beacon and some of our peer organizations are advancing a family supportive housing bill right now. Beacon also sits on a coalition of other nonprofit affordable housing providers in Minnesota, just called the Housing Stability Coalition. Just in the last legislative session, we successfully advocated for the creation of a task force to better understand the state's response in stabilizing nonprofit affordable housing and supportive housing in particular. There was a task force this past summer on that topic that came up with like 25 recommendations. We have all of them in a piece of legislation that we're trying to advance right now and testify on it last week. So, but you know, with that, I would just say, you know, this is a moment for this work, for the residents that we serve, that we all need and we are all needed for. And I just, if I have no other message for each of you, given Valley's unique role in this work over many years, it's, you know, number one, thank you. And number two, we need you now more than ever before. So with that, I just open things up for folks questions. Yeah.
If you get on Beacon's mailing list, on email list, you get these alerts that all you have to do is take action, and you just press the button and your name and your zip code and stuff, and then exactly who to contact. So do you think those make a difference when you're clicking on that and responding?
Well, I can tell you, as somebody who has lived multiple lives in this work as a Beacon advocate, back when I was a school board member, I helped. I was involved in some of the advocacy that created Vista 44 in Hopkins, my hometown. It's a family supportive housing development similar to Emerson Village, and we overcame a lot of NIMBY resistance there in order to get that done. As a county commissioner, I was the recipient of a lot of Beacon advocacy, both around changes to Hennepin County policies to prioritize more of our funding for permanent supportive housing, and actually to get a few specific projects funded. And I can tell you, as a policymaker, when you get 40 emails from one side of an issue and no emails on the other side of an issue, it makes makes a big difference, especially if those are coming from your constituents. So that's a long-winded way of saying, yes, it does make a difference. It doesn't just go into a vacuum. And there's a lot of different ways to advocate. This is like the lowest, the sort of the lowest barrier to entry. This will get you on Beacon's mailing list. We do have opportunities to train folks to go to the Capitol and, meet their legislators and, train them to talk about the issues and then go effectively advocate. Because it's one thing if an organization like Beacon goes, everybody knows what we think about these topics. It's another thing for, a legislator to sit down with 3 or 4 of their constituents and hear this is an issue that matters to them. That's the foundation of real effective advocacy. Do we want to get to this federal topic?
Obviously, you see a big impact on what Beacon's doing.
Yeah, I mean,
How much do we get from federal grants?
yeah, I think it's important to understand, the existence of permanent supportive housing as a solution to homelessness would not exist but for extraordinary public vision and investment across Republican and Democratic administrations over decades, going back to the Reagan administration, actually. Across Beacon's work, we rely on federal investment in 3 different areas. Actually, number 1 is in funding for services in our buildings, especially for youth homelessness and for chronically homeless individuals. Federal funding also through Section 8 vouchers flows into a lot of our properties. In fact, in order to build a lot of our properties, we have this. This is like really getting into the wonky weeds and brass tacks, but we'll take from like the Met Council, and I think this is true at Emerson Village, 40 units of housing voucher that we then 40 housing vouchers that then get attached to a specific unit that then pays the rents for person there. That's a federal program. So that's another area. It hasn't gone away, but that's another area where we rely on federal dollars with programming. And then the third is the capital funding for the bricks and mortar to create new projects. There's an array of federal programs that help with that. The administration has signaled their intent. They haven't quite gotten there yet, but to eliminate as many as 50% of employees at the Department of Housing and Urban Development, with 80% of those cuts coming specifically to the divisions that run these homelessness response programs. A couple of weeks ago, quietly on a Friday, a lot of other actions, they eliminated the Interagency Council on Homelessness. This week, I received an email from a gentleman named Jeremy, who's at HHS, Health and Human Services. And it was from his personal Gmail account. He's a mid-level staffer there in the Administration of Children and Families at HHS. And he said, I'm emailing you because I didn't want you to be left in the dark. And I had some fears that this day was coming. But I have been frozen out of my all of my accounts. I've been told my position has been eliminated. And Jeremy, for reference, is responsible as our point of contact for our TLP grants. That's the Transitional Living Program that funds services for homeless youth in our youth problems.
You get these statement grants to now.
No, just, and he said in this message, I would imagine you all have as many questions as I do. I wish I could tell you what this means for the future of this funding. I wish I could tell you who your point of contact is here now. I can't. What I can say is this, and this, I actually got emotional as I read this because, this is the same day that Senator Booker had just wrapped up his filibuster. As a pretty extraordinary example of, courageous individual action in this moment. But I thought Jeremy's care and decency at an otherwise indecent time was also an extraordinary act of courage and kindness. He wrapped up his message just saying how much this work has meant to him and how inspiring it's been to work with organizations like Beacon that bring tangible solutions to young people exiting homelessness. It's been his life's work. And so, yeah, it's part of the reality that Beacon and others are navigating right now. And we, I mean, we're only a few weeks into this, but what part of what we're trying to help people understand is the extraordinary and effective systems level responses to homelessness that are happening right now. Do we need more of it? Does it need to be better funded? 100%. But we need people to understand these systems and the residents they serve so they can be effective advocates and understand what might happen if this stuff goes away.
How do you overcome what might be pushback from folks who would look at something like your work as an expense versus what I believe all of us view as this is an investment. It is far cheaper to deal with those issues now than to let them fester and become a bigger problem. And how do you push back?
Yeah, and I think it comes down to three things, and I've said it already. It's why I keep coming back to this is a proven solution, it's cost effective, and it's the compassionate, humane response. I think there's a lot of us that are principally motivated by it just being a compassionate and humane response, which it certainly is those things. But if that doesn't convince you, you know, the notion that it's effective and cost effective often is how we break through on that front. But you know, on the county board, I'll share this story maybe just as we wrap things up here, and then if folks want to stick around and chat, we can. You know, one of the most impactful experiences I had during that entire time was I did an 8-hour shift for ride along with Hennepin EMS, with the EMS chief, Marty Shears, former fire chief in Edina, sort of came out, you know, semi-retirement. I don't think he was quite ready to hang up the cleats yet, but for one final run as the leader at Hennepin EMS, extraordinary leader. And what was breathtaking about that experience, I did the 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. shift. So it was, you know, just as things were starting to heat up in our community. And, you know, we just, you know, he had a dispatch box there in his car, and his calls came up. We got to decide where we were going to go next. I'd say at least 60 to 70% of the calls we responded to had something to do with a fentanyl overdose.
Okay.
We had 2 deaths we responded to. We had 3 Narcan resuscitations. We had a couple situations where we had judgment calls to make about literally, are we going to send somebody to the emergency room or send them to jail? Like, because those were the 2 doors. In particular, we responded to a call. A gentleman was in the midst of a mental health episode, homeless gentleman down in Loring Park. He was standing out in front of one of the high-end condominiums down there, just screaming, yelling, kind of out of his mind. And when Marty and I drove up on site, we were not the only ones who had responded to this emergency, to this 911 call. We got there, and Hennepin EMS was there with 2 paramedics, and they were the ones principally engaging with this gentleman. There was a Minneapolis PD car there with its lights going, and 2 police officers. And then there was, and I kid you not, a whole block long hook and ladder fire truck with 2 Minneapolis fire department staffers on site, all converging on this single gentleman's emergency.
Yeah, right.
And the 2 paramedics were engaging with the gentleman succeeded in de-escalating enough to get him to calm down. They eventually convinced him to sit on a stretcher and then lay down, taking his vitals. And then we're standing there. It's like, all right, well, what next? Where do we go from here? And the two options were to put him in the back of that ambulance and take him to HCMC, or to put him in the back of a squad car and take him to jail. Those were the options the system had. And what jumped out at me, and in this case, we wound up bringing him back to the ambulance and taking him to the ER, where he was probably discharged a few hours later and right back where he was. What jumped out at me at that interaction is, three things. Number one, like, these systems were not designed for this kind of emergency. We have an emergency response we have systems designed to respond to emergencies, but when more and more of our emergencies look like homelessness, mental health, substance use, we need new systems to actually respond to the real crises in our community. Number two, imagine, I just want to see somewhere the spreadsheet on what that single system's cost was for that resident. And I just think about how much more effectively those resources could be stewarded, and what the impact, most importantly, for that gentleman would be if we better align our system resources to that. So, yeah, with that, I just want to, again, thanks to all of you for a little of your time this morning, but more importantly for your interest and investment in this topic as human beings. As I've oriented and navigated to this moment more broadly, not just for Beacon, but for our community and our politics right now. Not to get political, I'm not going to get polemic or partisan here, but our politics often comes down to choices, right? And elections are the most prominent example of that. You've got to choose A or B. But I think they can sort of deceive us into thinking that the most important choice in any given election might be between two particular leaders, which it often comes down to that. But I'll say another just as important choice rattling around underneath our politics right now is what I believe is the choice between hope and cynicism. Hope and cynicism. On the one hand, I like and understand the cynics, no rose-colored glasses. They see the world as it is, and there's a lot to be cynical about in our world today, in our politics. The problem with the cynics is that they don't think that it can ever change, and that can become a buffer against individual commitment and solidarity. I think hope, on the other hand, isn't for me a feeling or a personality type. It's a decision, it's a choice that we get to make, and I personally make in part because of this thing we call faith. We're sitting in a and in fact, that is the underpinnings of any movement, effective movement for change, whether led by an individual or a community in our nation's history. There's this scripture that faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things unseen. The other way to think about that is that faith and hope is believing in spite of the evidence and then watching the evidence change. So imagine a different world is possible than the one we're experiencing right now. Bet our lives on it to choose that path and then to walk forward. I believe, despite all of the broader challenges, whether it's DC, whether it's the headwinds we are facing in this sector and on homelessness and housing instability more broadly, despite all that, I actually am an optimist. I believe that we can end homelessness. We've seen it with populations like veterans. We know what it's going to take is all of us standing in that gap and saying, let's do it together. So I just want to thank you all for choosing the path of full cynicism in this moment, and for for being one of our really important member congregations. Thank you. Thank you.
I want to let you all know, one action that you can take is attend the Fridays in the Valley concert this Friday night. It'll be a free will offering that we'll collect to support the work that Beacon is doing. So if you can't make it on Friday night, you can watch it. You can use the give button on our website to give, selecting Fridays in the Valley, and then we'll get that those funds over to Beacon in the next coming weeks. So thank you
you.
for being here, Chris.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
I know a gentleman on that picture.
Oh, right on.
I know it. It's my brother-in-law's father. I got a little closer, but I am positive that's Richard.